watching their jumps practice. There we go. Got it. Yep, I'm at the training center. Watch the high jumpers practice a little earlier, and then now the long triple group is getting in some work, some runway work. So
what is the utilization of that facility? What's the frequency of use and numbers and all that?
It's a pretty small group that trains here regularly. With, let me think, probably less than 15 on the jump sprint side, and then there's probably 5 or so multi-athletes that are here, and then I'm not really sure about the throwers. I don't get to see them much because they're kind of tucked away over another corner. But yeah, this group is here 5 days a week, 6 days a week, typically from 10 to 3 or 4 p.m. So they're here quite a bit. I mean, the group, I know the dynamics are changing just with how USA Track and Field has kind of made some changes administratively and things like that with the training center. So I know Coach Fisher's kind of working on bringing in a lot of other international groups in the next couple months and years too. So I think it'll get a lot more use, just a different type of use too.
Now it was under the auspices of USOC for quite a while. That's who built it.
Yeah, but now the city of Chula Vista owns it now.
All right. And was that the result of lack of use, or because it was pretty barren the times I've been?
Great question. I don't actually know the answer to that one specifically. I could probably ask Fisher; he would know. But yeah, it's pretty barren. Like, especially, I've only been here post-COVID, but I know that housing is harder to get into, and things are just expensive down here. Even to stay here, it's pretty pricey. So, Chris Bernard.
Yeah, well, that's another reason the death of track and field in the U.S. Right? You can't make any money while you're trying to train and do all those things. To get paid, you have to have money before you can get paid. If that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, and it's kind of interesting that, talking to all these athletes that are here, I think we all just kind of assume that they're on contract and that they have certain resources that are different than everybody else. But for the majority of them, I'd say there's a few that are on some pretty good deals, but as a whole, the majority of them are kind of working through their own resources, kind of getting family support, local support back home to kind of help put them through this process, because it's something they want as well. But like, we know that just the sponsorship money and the prize money and things is it's not as ideal in the jumps world and the field events as it is in the sprint side. So
yeah,
so pretty much always been that way, right? It's very reflective of the way that both the IAAF and USA Track and Field, I'm sure, I don't know about other governing bodies, but it's very reflective of the lack of creativity and how to promote the sport. It's always been that way. It's
yeah.
I mean, have you ever seen a movie called Chariots of Fire?
Mm-hmm. Oh, not in a long time, but yes.
Seen it. Okay. Well, we might as well be having those guys run the show. It's just, these bureaucrats that can't think outside of themselves. I was telling Troy, I've got a friend of mine who works with Sebastian Coe at IAAF. We've had a number of conversations, and I hadn't what I'm about to say is the result of a conversation we had a few years ago. I had no idea that the Golden League meets had really fallen on bad times. That previously when I was coaching, the stadiums were packed, and now
the Diamond League.
They're Diamond League now. Yeah, they're 25% maybe, and they're IAAF is trying to come up with format changes in how the events are run to try to generate interest, and The guys that have run USA Track and Field and prior to that TAC and prior to that AAU and all that crap, it's been the same recipe from start to finish, and it's just a failed process.
Right. What do you think could be changed, like from the ground up, or from where do you think we might be able to loosen things up to help things grow?
That's a big question. Troy and I were talking the other day, I think. Troy, you mentioned the track and field participation at the high school level is still the number one participation sport. Is that right?
It's pretty high in a lot of schools, yeah. Just because, you can have large teams when you can have a lot of people. And if the coaches are doing it kind of the smart way, you just keep all your athletes. You don't even have cuts. You make sure you keep them, and you fundraise with them.
Right.
So you can build your program and keep your pits new and all your canopies, and, get everybody decent equipment and whatever. So yeah, it depends on the school.
Yeah. I think I was talking to, it might have been Rose Monday. I've known her for years, and I've had a number of conversations. I think she may have been the one that said it's still the number one participation sport in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And so, to go back to your question, Lauren, so let's assume that you have that level of participation, and I don't know what I have no idea what the roster roles are for college compared to 30 years ago. I have no idea, but let's assume that they're equivalent. So the question that you're asking, one of the things that would have to be looked at is what is the data on participation? What's the data on continuation of competition beyond high school? What is the continuation of competition beyond college? And then from that, if that's static, which I think it is, then that begs the question, okay, wait a second, if we're not seeing a reduction in the competitive environment in terms of numbers, the next question is, are we seeing a reduction in the quality of competition? And the answer is going to be no, because records are still being broken, kids are getting better, and performances are improving for the most part. So then that begs the question, okay, well, if the product in terms of the resources are good and they remain good, then what is stopping this product from generating interest?
Right.
And in America, the easy answer is, okay, because the big four dominate viewer participation. Football, baseball, basketball, and hockey, and then you got soccer that's on the move. Then you have individual sports like tennis and golf. Golf has its own little niche, so does tennis. So where does that leave track and field? I personally think that, at least in America, that in order to attract and retain both viewership and fan base, that there has to be something more than an individual athlete that the fan is following.
Yeah.
I years ago I put together, this is packed away in some file cabinet. I put together a concept that I was actually floated with Casey Wasserman, who's a friend of mine. He runs Wasserman Media Group. He does a lot of representation, does a lot of media representation, athlete representation, so on and so forth. I've known him for years. And I brought it to him. I said, what do you think? And he said, yeah. And he said, this is the only thing that's going to go. I mean, it's because everybody in America is so team oriented. So,
yeah.
So it's based on that. So the answer, I believe, is you've got to address what attracts the viewer, attracts the fan. And I don't think it's the individual athlete. I think within a team environment or a group environment, yeah, there are individual athletes that stand out, but the identity and the marketing of track and field as a sport is going to be brand built on something more than the athlete.
Right. What about like dual meets, more just stoking more competition, maybe putting less on the marks for viewership or spectator, regard? Because a lot of times if we were to get, oh, sorry, you guys see me now? Oh, there we go. If we can get more people to spectate, they might not be totally in the know of what's going on the screen, but if there's a little bit of a competition that's set up there inherently, just setting up duels or different races against different competitors that have some hype, and that seems to get some more fans.
Yeah, I mean, you certainly could do that. I was thinking about this when we were at Mount Sac together, and I hadn't been there since they rebuilt the stadium and the facilities and all that. And I was just sitting there thinking about how, the 3-ring circus that track and field is as it's currently set up. If you want to really generate interest without changing the format, it seems to me a couple of things have to happen. You're not going to fill the LA Coliseum except during the Olympics, right? So you're going to have smaller venues with smaller stands, and you want it from the standpoint of creating the atmosphere you're looking for. You want those stands filled. Doesn't matter whether it's only 3,000 or 10,000. That doesn't make any difference. But the packed stands does make a difference. So how do you do that? And I was thinking about just the layout at Mount Sac. Have you been there recently?
Yeah, okay. I was just there a couple weeks ago.
Okay. So just look at that layout, right? It's a standard track layout, but from the standpoint of generating spectator interest and excitement, you've got to put everything on one side. Everything has to be on one side. You can't have the long jump and the triple jumps on the opposite side. You can't have, the discus ring and the shot put ring in the middle of the facility, because you can't see it. You can't do. You're going to have to figure out some other configuration that obviously doesn't disrupt the oval, but creates a concentrated kind of theater atmosphere where everything is happening right in front of you.
Right.
And then the other thing, and this is something I've talked to USATF about, because they've tried to do this. There has to be a really choreographed schedule of events. It has to be one thing right on top of another.
Oh yeah.
It has to be completed in 2 hours. I mean, the USATF, their goal was 2 hours for a major meet.
Wow.
So how do you do that? Well, you pay a lot of money, you get people on the track, and they're moving stuff around, and one event's going, the other event, the next event is warming up. The people cross the finish line, and a minute and a half later, that gun is going off for the next race.
Definitely. Yeah, that's something that I think is definitely overlooked in the sport as a whole, starting on all levels, is just the manpower it takes to host and to manage good meets. It really does take a lot of organization and proper planning to make sure that those things are moving correctly and moving quickly. Something I think is definitely doable. We could do so much more to increase viewership and to increase the fan base in general. Like Troy and I talked about a while back with the cameras and just broadcasting and things. There's just so many different things we could do. It's just that this technology is being utilized in other sports and other atmospheres, and obviously having meet management like that has worked in other sport atmospheres. So I think it just takes a little bit of application and creativity to make that stuff happen.
Sure.
I'd love to see that happen.
We're still being driven by the fact that the dollar still rules, and like I said, we've got a lot of work to do to create a product that everybody wants to see, to make these changes, both the organization of meet, how it's run, dual meet versus big invitationals. I remember seeing video of the UCLA USC dual meets that were there before I was at the school. And in all the time that I was at Drake Stadium and now Rayford Johnson's track, him and his wife, there was never a packed house that I remember in my 4 years on the team. And even if USC came, for a dual meet, basically the people that were in the stands were the athletes' friends and parents. And that was it, And so I remember seeing these videos where there were 10 and 12 people deep on the IM field looking into Drake Stadium, watching the high jump back when Rory Kotinik was jumping against SC, and the stands were packed, and this was back in the late 70s, So the only reason I know it was late 70s because I got there in 82. So before me, it had to be late 70s, and Rory Kotinik had the school record at Millikan before I got it. So it was like, he jumped 7.6 too. He's crazy. But the stands were packed, full of people. And this is back in the heyday, back when people really knew track and field. And I think that's the biggest thing that we're facing, is the fact that people in the US especially really don't know much about track and field anymore. It's not like it used to be, like all the best decathletes in the world until Haley Thompson were all Americans. You go back Bruce Jenner and before, that was decathlon was an American sport, and
right.
The high jump for the longest time, the first guys to jump 7 feet, Ronaldo Brown and all these other guys, even the straddlers, and Fosbury revolutionized the event. That was American, and everybody knew that, and then we had Rayford Johnson winning the decathlon back in the the 60s, and a UCLA guy and all that. So now, unfortunately, nobody knows about the Olympics, and they still get some airplay, every 4 years, but, we're fighting that battle. I like the idea of you guys are talking about the teams, maybe it needs to, I hate to let the SEC get in the driver's seat again, but,
No, not for college. Are you talking about colleges?
College dual meets.
No, you're not gonna generate it that way.
Yeah.
And only because it's so monstrous, it's so big.
Yeah.
As it becomes this unwieldy thing that you're trying to shove into a small, container, and that's pretty tough to do. Sorry.
Yeah, definitely. I think.
But what I was going to say is that, post collegiately, it's a very doable thing. But you got to have, the financial resources to put it together and create the inducement, create the financial incentive on the part of the athletes to participate in a format. Yeah. And then you've got to have all the other elements. You got to have a lot of elements in place, but it's doable. It would be a much more abbreviated a competition, very fast, but you'd be combining, the idea is that you're combining what is appealing to a lot of the spectators and spectator interest, which is having an identifiable team that you can align with. And then you're using within that team, you're using the individual athletes and promoting them,
right,
et cetera. So that was the concept that I put. I outlined this thing years ago, and never pursued it, in part because I was getting out of coaching.
Yeah.
It's worth floating to Rose again to see whether or not she'd bite. She's creative enough that she might bite on it. But so it's the state of track and field. We Troy and I were talking about this as well. I don't know, Lauren, how long have you been coaching? You've been coaching a while?
About 5 years now.
And are you a California kid or no?
Yeah, well, it's kind of. I grew up in Northern California. I went to high school in Central Arkansas, and then I came back to California for college. So, been here for the last 10 years.
Okay, cool. So what's your sense of the world of track and field in terms of development in the US?
It's rough. I mean, there's so many different ways I can answer that question, from like some of the things that I've seen, just in terms of like, you know, people getting away with kind of selling a different picture than what the development kind of program looks like, or what that operation is like, just because there is such a lack of development or organized developmental teams, so to speak. I think we could just do a lot better job at being more collaborative in general. And that I'm saying that from a top down and bottom up kind of perspective. So for myself as a coach, like I think I see a lot of competitiveness and a lot of territorialness with athletes at times, especially when it comes to transfers and things. So my focus as a coach these last few years has been within the junior college to Division II branch. So when I was coaching at the JC, just trying to get kids off to the next level, and then now coaching at a D2, trying to bring kids up from the JCs. And in terms of development, that's a really cool opportunity to, you know, to get some kids that have been exposed to different types of coaching, to a little bit of variety in terms of philosophy and technique. And there's an opportunity to shock the system and just throw them right into your own program. But we're really talking about long-term development. There's a lot of collaboration that could be happening between each level of coach. So, you know, as I'm acquiring kids to the D2 level, especially if it's a pretty talented junior college athlete, or say I'm a junior college coach acquiring a really talented high school athlete, trying to make the connection with their coaches and trying to see what has been working for them, or what types of resources have been available to them in the past. And then maybe, you know, trying to create a pipeline of knowledge and resources from different schools to schools, or levels to levels, because I think that I see that the competition and that territorialness is kind of what's doing us in as a sport. Even especially within the college system, you know, I felt this year was my first year at the D2 level, and I really felt that competitiveness between the different schools and staffs within our conference. And it's fun and it's exciting, but at the same time, I'd love to see our sport grow as a whole. And I love to see people achieve things they didn't think they could achieve. And I think it's really cool that we can all collaborate and connect over training and different methods. So I'm a little disappointed at the state of it right now. I think there are some different people that are really going out of their way to try to help change that. And I think Coach Fisher's one of them. You know, just seeing his program grow with his MBA services, and seeing how he's trying to help educate some younger coaches and things into some pretty basic training philosophies that can really be helpful and beneficial in the long run. I think that that's really helpful. Things like Altus makes coaching education a little bit more accessible, which I think can help to facilitate these conversations as a whole, and hopefully help to develop athletes longer and keep them more interested in our sport longer.
Yeah,
that's kind of a roundabout answer, but
no, it's a good answer. What do you think the state of I'll back up. Years ago, I was having dinner with Bobby Kersey, and we were discussing, you know, training methods, not so much philosophy, but the question that I ultimately asked him, I said, listen, what is your assessment of the quality of coaching, knowledge base, the understanding of applied physics in sports, the understanding of energy systems, the understanding of training effect, integrative training. Given all of that, what is your sense of the knowledge base of track and field coaches? And he said, I said, you know, maybe a better way to ask that question is, do you think that you're heads and tails above everybody else, given the amount of success that you've had, notwithstanding drug use? And everybody else is kind of in the middle ground, or do you see yourself as kind of an average coach and everybody else sucks? And he said, I'm an average coach and everybody else sucks. And I mean, just as a case in point, when I was with Troy at Mount Sac, we were watching the high jump, and I did not see, as an example, I did not see a single change as the bar progressed, a single change in the start position of the approach for a single high jumper.
Really?
And I was like, okay, how is that possible? Why would that not? I mean, since it's the most fundamental element of jumping high, why would there not be a corresponding change as the bar goes up? And not a single athlete. So
they're all
they're all using, the marks remain the same, and their approach, and I mean, it's just, like I said, so the question to you is, do you think the knowledge base has improved dramatically, or it has improved, or there's a friend of mine who coached do you know John Frazier from UCLA?
The name is very familiar. I probably met him.
Yeah, he's coached at Arizona, Tennessee, Florida, UCLA. He's now the head coach at Texas State.
Okay.
And I asked him that same question, and he just shook his head. He said, "There's a lot of questionable stuff out there, man. It's just, it's like, I don't understand it. With the proliferation of information availability, how in the world is that possible? Unless the people don't understand it."
Well, that's what I was going to say. I think it really goes back to, like, especially having worked in like the academics. I mean, we probably all have in some capacity, in many capacities, is like, I think when it comes back to like the school administration that are doing hiring, and they just don't understand the complexities of the sport and what it might take to have, reputable, knowledgeable coaches on staff. And so a lot of times it starts from like the ground up. There's, especially like, for instance, in our area where I'm from, there's no middle school club programs. There's no camps in the area within like a 2 or 3 hour radius. So any of the track athletes in our area, what they're exposed to is what they get at school. And in terms of hiring, there's just no real requirements or education around who they hire. So things can get really interesting, especially when, like, so the junior college I was working at, we would oftentimes get kids come in, even if they had done 2 or 3 years of high school track, just some of the stuff that they learned or acquired was just very interesting. And sometimes just seemed a little bit, just like there's a lot of room for growth in that respect. And I think that that's the case for a lot of areas these days.
Well, let me ask you this. And this is honestly is an indictment. It's not an indictment of track and field. It's an indictment of athletic development across the spectrum of sports. Since I've started to look at trying to get back into it, I've taken a look at results specific to track and field over the last 4 years, and actually have created a table of programs and how they've performed and what their improvements have been over time. And the vast majority of these programs don't improve.
Right.
I mean, it's right. And it's okay. So which begs the question, okay, why are they not improving? And improvement not measured necessarily by, not necessarily measured by whether they're moving from 100 to 150 ranking and specific to D1 or D2 or whatever, to top 75 and then top 50. And I'm not saying that. I'm saying, is there improvement in actual performance of individual athletes year over year? And you're not seeing it. Now, does that mean that the athlete's not capable? I don't believe that. My philosophy. my philosophy has always been every single athlete can improve, every one.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
So if let's assume that that's a constant, notwithstanding the when I was at SC, Coach Alice had a no cut policy. Anybody could come out and they'd be suited up and they could run, and whatever meets they could get into, if it wasn't conference related type stuff. And there were people there that were participation oriented. They were out to stay fit and have fun, and they weren't necessarily going to commit themselves. But by the same token, I told them when I first got there, I said, listen, here's the deal. There's only one thing I need from you. I need 100% commitment to what I asked you to do. If you can't do that, find something else to do. And every kid there did so. And I'm assuming that is the case at every program. Now, what my understanding is, Troy has told me this, that is not the case at every program. There's a lot of variability in not only the knowledge base, but the approach and implementation that results in programs in these, I don't know how many programs there are in D1, 2, 3, and NAIA. I have no idea. But what do you think? Maybe 500?
Yeah. Safe.
500 programs, something like that, maybe 400.
Yeah.
Well, you've got maybe out of those, you might have 50 to 75 programs that are consistently good, and everybody else sucks. And the schools will not hold anybody accountable, and that's the thing I don't get. I don't understand that. We have a situation at UCLA now where I don't know. You guys, did you look at the results of nationals by any chance?
No, I was scared to do that.
0 points for the men.
Yeah.
8 points for the women.
Wow, that's shocking.
Yeah.
Well,
last national championship for UCLA's men's team was in 1987?
88.
88.
And so there's, the reports that I'm getting through contacts at UCLA, just as a case study, is that it's the program is absolutely in chaos.
Yeah.
Not just from a management standpoint, but from a knowledge and understanding and application standpoint as well.
Yeah.
I mean, how in the world is it possible for an institution with the gravitas that UCLA has? There's not a better place in the I don't know, maybe there's a better place in the world to train, but I don't know too many.
Right.
And then you add to that all the additional stuff it comes with going to that school. Not that I would go there, of course. Too hard left, way too hard left for me.
Yeah.
But it's not like you can't recruit the kids and get good kids there. So, okay, why the performance and why the allowance for 25 years of crappy performance?
Yeah.
Goodness.
I don't understand that.
Great question. I think that's happening a lot more often than we think, but just at more, not UCLA's, but at a lot of schools, there's just that lack of accountability. The coaches, a lot of these schools, who they can hire, it's a lot of younger coaches, higher turnover, just keeping things simple.
Yeah, that weight scale has got a lot to do with it for sure.
Well, certainly here, certainly in California.
Yeah. Well, I've been looking at those jobs, the D1 jobs, just out of curiosity for the last few weeks, and, assistant coach jobs, even at the D1 level for track and field, are generally around $25,000, $30,000.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
you get the same job. I floated the job at Biola 2 years ago was 25,000, and that's D2, right? So not much difference between D2, D1, and, I'm sure they would rather have volunteer if they could get away with it.
Well, it is almost
5 or
like
30 grand.
like Lauren was saying, at the high school level, and in a lot of places, a lot of high schools, it's the math teacher that's doing the coaching.
Yeah.
Out of necessity.
Yeah.
And
And
not only.
it's, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, finish your thought.
I was just gonna say, and it's above Abin's pay grade to go and looking to see what kind of coaching education that there is that might be beneficial to the situation. So
Right.
just kind of stick to the basics, even though there are some really affordable and really, accessible options for getting your beginner level coaches educated. So I think that that's something for myself as a coach. I try to, when I'm hiring on assistant coaches or we're working with younger staff, is just trying to support and encourage them to really look towards getting educated and look towards getting some certifications or going and getting some hands-on learning from other coaches with more experience, because I think a lot of people are just hesitant to do that for whatever reason. They're afraid to put themselves out there, to ask and to show their ignorance and just say, hey, I would like to know more about what I'm doing. Instead, it's like, let me just walk into this and show my confidence and show I'm ready to go. That's a good thing to have that confidence at times, but I think it's always good for us to just try to learn and try to encourage others around us to learn as well, especially knowing that under education is the state of the sport at this point.
Yeah. There was there was an endowment that was created by the '84 committee. That
LA 84.
Yeah, 84, LA 84.
Yeah, Doug does some of those, right? The clinics.
The AAF Amateur Athletic Foundation, which is down.
Yeah.
Have you been there?
I haven't, but I've heard a lot about it from different.
Yeah, I don't. One of the things that it has
check it out.
is outstanding is their library. Their library is impressive.
Really?
Yeah.
Writing it down right now so I don't forget.
It's on
Library.
West Adams, isn't it, Troy?
I'm not sure where the times that I've gone to two different clinics. They are held in two different places. So I'm not sure.
No, I'm talking about the foundation.
Yeah.
Property. I think it's on West Adams. It's in the West Adams district.
Okay.
Which is just beyond mid Wilshire, a little bit closer to downtown, just south of the 10 freeway.
Okay.
But they, one of the guys that was one of the head guys there is a guy named Skip Stoley. He's up now back in his home state of Illinois, I think. But they put together a series of nationwide coaches clinics, trying to homogenize the methodology of coaching in track and field. And it was, they put a lot of people in a lot of seats in the chairs, but then it dies on the vine, and the governing body is not smart enough to pick it up.
Right.
USOC is not going to think about it. They're going to cede it to the governing body. So nothing happens, and then you're left with some crazy stuff that's being prescribed.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's
I think we're fighting too many problems at once, both from saying, better organized meets, and you need sponsorship, you need some deep pockets, you still do need some star power, just because I believe the way that everything runs, there's watchability in teams, but I watch football and I know the teams, but I still know the most important players on each team, which 9 times out of 10 is the quarterback, but everybody knows their stars and all that. So it's like, you've got to have some marketable product that way. And one of the things that we've been fighting in track and field for the longest time is not getting the top quality athletes because they're going to go where they can make money. So when they're in high school, you have a choice between football, basketball, baseball, and like you said, hockey, and then some other sports. Track and field's way, way down the list of the big money makers, and I didn't realize that. When I was in college at UCLA, I would sit up with my roommate, Dwayne Washington, and I used to sit up my freshman year in the dorms and talk about how we were going to make Olympic teams and get onto Wheaties boxes and make all this money. And, I look back at that now and I just chuckle, because unless you are even the peak guys, I mean, Carl Lewis, at his peak, what was he bringing in every year? It's minuscule compared to what's going on. I don't know what Usain Bolt, made in his 3 Olympics run. And I've seen a couple cool commercials, where he's here and, hey, that's Usain Bolt. He's pretty easy to spot, but at the same time, he's getting 1/100th of what one of those, Michael Jordan still makes more money than everybody else, selling shoes and whatever now. So, unless we have some killer clout, we're losing some of the best athletes in the world. And even then, some of the best ones still do amazing things, like we say, but between the packaging and the star power and the organization, and I believe there's just enough money that, there's just enough competition for people that are just in it just for that, and so you've got the ones that are smart enough to try to bilk everybody, from in the grassroots systems, from the AAU and, Junior Olympics level on up, with track teams and whatever. And, Kern and I talked about this a while back. Coach Anthony Kern, formerly of UCLA, unceremoniously let go, even though he was just a volunteer paid coach, non-paid coach at the end. He was saying that he thinks the lifeblood of track is still at the grassroots level, getting those young kids, they call them like newts and gremlins and lizards or whatever. Like, I've seen those meet results, they got them running around at 4 or 5 years old, and get them early and build them up, but I remember, was it a couple years ago, they had the 100-meter final at the state, was Reggie Bush versus Maurice Jones-Drew, and you don't hear about those anymore. That was already almost 20 years ago.
There's an idea. What if USATF started to embed these exhibition races in these high school state meets and different regional meets and things like that to try to hype some people up, hype some things up.
Yeah, I mean, see, it's thinking like that, but you're asking people that don't have that level of creativity to come up with that. You could bring it to them. That would be like, oh, that's a good idea. Then all of a sudden they put it in they create a box so small that you could never get it to work. But that kind of thinking is exactly what has to happen. There has to be leveraging of other athletes and other sports. There's got to be a commingling of this talent pool. And the beauty of something like that, Lauren, is that you can leverage the name recognition of those athletes that already exists.
Mm-hmm.
You're not asking somebody to hey, do you know who what's her name, Sha'Carri Richardson, and do you know who that is? No, I've never heard of her. Have you ever heard of Serena Williams? Yeah, well, she's throwing the shot today.
Yeah, it's like an opening pitch of a baseball game, kind of. Something that's exciting. That's a little flair.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah, that'd be fun. What
about another idea that I had just recently, and this was after watching Instagram feeds for a couple years now. You guys both know this, being on the West Coast, especially Southern California-ish. There are no, nor is there any need for any indoor facilities to have any meets at or anything like that, because everybody knows it never rains in Southern California. So what do we need an indoor training facility for? And I remember in high school I got invited to the Sunkist Invitational. This was in 1982, my senior year. So I think it was 81, actually, right after football season. And I never had a worse experience jumping in my life than jumping indoor on wood in track spikes, that were sinking into the floor, and, everything's super compact, there's no room anywhere. And I remember no hiding at 6'4" and swearing I would never go back. And, I look at these meets that they're doing. I see these high school kids jumping in what looks like their basketball court at home with the pits inside. And they're running on these nice, shiny, floors like they have at Poly Pavilion or something like that. And they're jumping in high tops and looking like they're just having a blast. I'm like going, now that would be fun. I would love to organize a meet like that at any level, high school
Right.
on up,
Right.
and say, let's just get one.
That's another, that's
just
a great,
high jump women,
well, whatever the event is.
Yeah.
Challenge the football players at the college. You think you're fast? Come out here.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
think how fast can you run not that it would be a mile, but how fast can you run 800 meters, or how fast can you run a mile? I can break 5 minutes. All right, put your money where your mouth is. Let's go.
Yeah.
I love it. One thing I was thinking too was like, kind of what you were talking about, Troy, with the different indoor styles and things, is it makes me think of pole vault. I think they've done a really good job with the pole vault community at getting creative and creating different types of events. And they have the street vaults on the East Coast a lot, and in parts of Europe where they just close off a street in the middle of a city and build a runway and a platform out. Pole vault summit is a really good example of that. I talked to the guys at UCS about what would it take to do a high jump summit next door, because there's a whole separate room that could be doable, but once again it comes down to that, like, what kind of surface would we need to make this possible. But I think there's a lot of value in having those niche events that are event specific, and it just brings a lot of viewership out. It brings the community together in a way that really helps it grow. And I think that's something that the pole vault community has done a great job with. I think partially because they're a branch off of the gymnastics community in a way.
Yes.
And they're very familiar with that format. But
Well,
I think that's something that we should get into more.
What about the Ninja, the American Ninja, the way they do their thing, that traveling road show where they set that course up anywhere and everywhere.
Totally.
And that would be the
absolutely.
There was a guy out
Think
of
about it. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, some great thoughts. There was a guy out of Chicago that did a high jump summit back in the late 90s. And tried to get it off the ground, and it failed. But see, it's this kind of thinking that has to happen. Lauren, you asked that question early, and it's that level of creativity. It's completely got to go outside of whatever. But any vision, traditional vision that people have at track and field, it can't be anything closely associated.
Yeah.
It's got to be very different.
Well, I watched.
When I was,
go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go.
I was just gonna say, I used to work I still do sometimes work as a personal trainer, and do group exercise and stuff. And just using that job and to kind of expose different people that I work with to track and field and what it might offer has been super fun. And I think that it's just an option, too, is just to kind of integrate it more into the general fitness, high intensity, like how we've got some sprint work kind of building into like the high intensity exercise performance realm. But if we got it a little bit more dialed in and a little bit more tied in with track and field, the sport itself, like the health and fitness industry, we tied track and field a little bit more into the health and fitness industry in some capacity, it could be a really good way to help it grow. Yeah. Like I just remember having some parents would bring, okay, I'll take it. I had some parents would bring their kids in for training sessions. They want them to be more healthy or what have you. And these kids don't want to exercise at all. They don't want to be lifting a kettlebell or throwing around a dumbbell or whatever it is. But you brought a bunch of plyo boxes and some mini hurdles and make something exciting out of it and start to introduce them to this sport in a really grassroots kind of a way and kind of introduce them to health and fitness and track in that way. It can be really exciting. And it's been it's been a really fun thing for me to get to do, to see how that kind of connects some dots for different age groups and different people too, and reflect on my own journey. So I just think like the things we could do, liability wise, the JC I used to work at, we would have like a Sunday fun day. And on Sundays, we would try to open up the track, and just have people come out and play around if they wanted to do different things, try to throw a javelin or, pick up a shot put or something like that. And it was just really great to see that open doors for different people, and also give those groups of people that wanted to come out kind of an opportunity to try something new. So
Sure.
I like the thumbs up in there. I'm going to do a long overdue introduction. Welcome to Raise the Bar, the Sky High and Fly Jump Camps podcast. I'm your host, Troy Haynes, former nobody high jumper at UCLA. Been out of the sport for a long time now, been coaching for more years than anything else. My two guests, we are talking with Lauren Magneson, who jumped at, where did you jump again, Lauren, at Chico State?
I jumped at Butte College and Chico State. Yeah.
Butte College and Chico State, and qualified for the U.S. Olympic trials one year. Is that correct?
No, unfortunately I didn't. In 2016, I would have qualified, but I didn't enter. I was going through some life changes as it goes and didn't quite have the confidence to submit my marks. And then come to find out, I looked and saw the entry list the day they came out. And
yeah,
I was really disappointed that I didn't enter, but it is what it is. And in hindsight's 2020. It's only helped me to grow as a person, as a coach, and as an athlete since then. So the goal is to kind of get back into that training shape that I was in back then and try to give 2024 a good shot for the trials.
Love that goal. That's awesome. The fact of the matter is that you did have a mark. They qualified you for the trials and you could have gone. So that also qualifies you for the current series on this podcast, which is both former and current Olympic trial participants and people that have even made it through the trials. My other guest is a former coach of mine and dear friend who came to my wedding, one of my groomsmen, Allan Hanckel, who spent many years coaching. He played lacrosse at Syracuse. Is that right, Allan?
That's correct.
And then he coached at many different places. You've already heard him mention UCLA and USC. He worked privately with one of the biggest names in American high jumping, Doug Nordquist. And under your work with Doug was when he jumped his PR of 7.875. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
That is correct. And also worked with Jimmy Connolly, who was the #1 ranked decathlete in the world that year until he broke his leg doing a commercial. Is that what I remember?
Yep.
Oh, what a break. What a break. So Allan has more years coaching than I do under his belt, and Lauren's a coach, and we've all been athletes at the collegiate level and tried to step higher than that. And so you're hearing three people give the breakdown on the current state of affairs in track and field here in the US and even around the world. And we're trying to troubleshoot and solve all the problems. So bear with us. This could take more than one podcast, but we're doing a good job of breaking it down. So continuing on in our discussion, we've already outlined the problem and maybe some ways around the problem. I love this idea of, because Allan, you had mentioned that we need these events to be shorter. Anybody that goes to a track meet anymore, when you run the triple jump as the last event and it takes a couple hours to get that done, and you start at 12, you're done at 8, that's not going to work on a TV schedule. So it seems to me that your idea of compacting things down, maybe it is simpler to just pick the individual events, and make as big a show as you can out of something like that. Get a spring-loaded floor. I used to listen to Lee Balkin and some of those guys back in the day regale me with tales of how it was like to jump over in Japan on these spring-loaded wood floors, covered with tartan. And I was like of the mind, I didn't ever want to jump indoors because of my experience at that Sunkist meet, jumping off of wood and spikes where you felt like you were sinking into the floor. And he was telling me, no, you got it all wrong. You go to these places and they would go around and test the floors, and say, oh yeah, right here, put the standards right here, put the pit here. And then you get guys jumping 7.7 and 7.8 indoor. And I'm like, well, that'd be great. Let's get Tam Berry and, get all these guys to something like that. Or, if it's impossible to get that kind of name power, then, like you said, just do it on the cheap with your local stud kids. And then, like you said, maybe open it up and say, oh, you guys think you're great basketball players, huh? Why don't you guys come over here and, try the high jump indoors? Guys that can go up and touch the top of the backboard,
Yeah. I think that's the beauty of the pole vault summit is, I don't know the logistics behind that, but it's not like they put out a whole lot of overhead. I don't think they do a prize money situation or anything like that, but because it's a learn by doing clinic and a competition. So it really is opening up the floor and giving just any random old person that might want to give it a shot, the opportunity to come out and give it a go, and to be taught by some of the best and get to sit and watch the best of the best do it.
Yeah.
Just a really cool environment.
Yeah, it is a cool environment. I remember back when it first started, one of the first venues was in Reno.
Yep.
And there was another one. I want to say, oh gosh, was there one in Phoenix?
I'm not sure if they've done it somewhere else. I've only been familiar with the one in Reno as of, I think I started going in 2016. Maybe.
Lord, were you born in like 2001 or something?
Pretty much, yeah. I'm a
Wow.
94 baby, 27 years young. Yeah.
27.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
27.
Yeah. Well, you are young.
Yep.
But that place was electric.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that is a happening
incredible
environment. And as I recall, is it still, or it was at least 2 days, maybe 3-day event?
Yeah, the way that it's laid out now is it's a Friday, Saturday event. So Friday, all the elites show up and they compete. Usually the elites and the masters compete Friday evening. And then Saturday, they have the opening ceremony. They've got some different speakers. The Learn by Doing clinic happens for all the athletes. And then there's a bunch of coaching seminars that happen also. And then in the afternoon is when all the open and college and high school and younger athletes get to compete. So it's a really incredible experience. And then something that Chico State has been really fortunate to be able to be a part of, just having some connections with UCS Spirit. I know we usually get to send a few kids up that direction, as well as a few other schools. And it's all volunteer only. So our kids, they sign up for it. They take themselves up there, they do it, but they get to go and do all the production work. So they help with the setup and the tear down of all the runways and the pits and things. So yeah, it's really rewarding experience, and getting to be a part of the build. It's especially when all the kids start showing up, it's almost like you get to work at the backstage at Disney World or something like that. It's really special, and all the elites get to compete, and we're out there on the pits with them, helping to do the bar putter uppers and things like that too. So it's a great experience. I think it would be so cool to see that model utilized more in our sport, because I know we have the fans for it. It's just a matter of making it accessible. And it's not like Reno in January is accessible, but they still get thousands of fans every year. So,
well, but too, they have a legacy, right? I mean, I went to the first one, and a number after that. And who was it Jan Johnson that started it?
Jan Johnson. I'm not sure.
He's out of the San Luis Obispo area.
Okay. I know that the Chapel family from the Reno area, they're pretty heavily involved with it nowadays. But,
really? Okay.
And the Mastrettis, the Chapels and the Mastrettis. Very nice people.
Yeah, I bet. All right. Sorry, Troy. Didn't mean to.
No, I like the festivity sound of that. I was thinking of one of the most electric events I've been to, which oddly enough was at a baseball game. I went to the the first game of the Giants versus who'd they play when they won their first title with Buster Posey and all those guys. They played the Texas Rangers, and it was in not Candlestick, but AT&T Park. And the city was electric when I got there. It was crazy. I got off the airplane and I got a ride from a crazy Russian taxi driver who got me from the airport to the ballpark in like 4 minutes.
That's
and
redundant.
it was like, I mean, I was just there, like, wow. And then everybody in this place was ready to go, you know. So we get there, they fell behind by 2 runs early, and the place was just not even bothered. It was just rocking. Everybody was having a great time. And
I love that.
I got up and walked around out into the outfield, because I've never been to even a playoff game before. So here I am sitting at the game 1 of the World Series, and I walked around out in the outfield there at AT&T Park, which I think has since been renamed. But they had one of those interactive things for the kids, you know, out there. They were playing, you know, different things. And I don't even know if it was baseball oriented. It might've just been slides and stuff, you know, for them to play, because they're kids, you know, they can't pay attention for 3 hours at a baseball game. But it was just so festive, you know. When you guys were talking about that, I keep thinking, you know, what a great thing if you can get the kids doing, you know, maybe they're doing tumbling, like you're saying, this combination of, you know, gymnastics that's required to be a great pole vaulter, you know, and teach them how to roll back, you know, feet over their head, you know, roll back, protective roll, and all that kind of stuff from the ground up, you know. And I like the sound of that. It just sounds like, you know, they're
Sorry, I'm switching over to my phone because my laptop's about to die.
yeah, I got you. So now you're on 2.
Oh, look at you. You're very talented.
She's doubling up.
You're like super talented, Lauren.
But yeah, I think
You're muted too, by the way, hon.
There she goes.
There we go.
There she goes. She's back. I think we're knocking on the right doors, though. It sounds like.
Yeah. So we're gonna solve the world problems here.
Yeah.
I think we're heading in the right direction.
It does beg the question, though, right?
Yeah.
And what do you? I mean, it's great to talk about it. It's all, you know, it's a whole different.
Yeah.
Ball game.
Yeah.
Oh, there was a guy named Paul the Apostle that was preaching to. He characterized a bunch of people at this one synagogue as people that sat around all day philosophizing over nothing, you know, getting nowhere,
making no moves. Yeah, I think that's something I think about a lot, and I have, especially just given my own journey through track and field, I've been thinking about these things for a long time. Just grew up in a pretty low income household and didn't have access to club track or like decent coaches, and that really held me back from a lot of opportunities at a young age. So I just remember sitting back and just thinking like, oh, what if track was more accessible, or what if we had XYZ options in place so that people really could have these opportunities, and how can we make it better? And I think it's hard because we look at the organization, the structure in our own country, and I think there's a lot to be improved. And we could take it in one direction, you know, from the top down, there's a lot to be cleaned up, I think, that could really benefit everything. But if we look at it more from a bottom up perspective, is, you know, how can we create more opportunities from where we're at, whether that be how we coach, or how we manage our time, or are we able to put events together and host events and try to make the sport truly more accessible for your own area. It's a lot of hard work, and it takes a lot of collaboration and a lot of coordination, especially with powers that be in different avenues, especially to find facilities. But I think it's worthwhile. You know, it's been really exciting to see camps pop up in my area nowadays, and hopefully we can start putting together some community meets and make those open to the public, you know, not just unattached post collegiates, but also like youngsters and masters and maybe Paralympians or para athletes as well. Just bring the sport together.
I love that idea. I think Paralympians are just totally almost operating under the radar and doing some of the most incredible things I've ever seen. I was I was so bummed that they didn't just, with the Olympics, they turned right around and had the Paralympics after it. I'm like, why separate? Why separate at all? Just put them in the show. I'm watching guys high jump with one leg, and I'm blown away. Some of those guys work so hard. I watch this guy, some of those guys feeds. I steal drills from them. I'm just like, that's an amazing thought. You're like, this guy's hopping to the bar on one leg, and I'm like, wow. So, and I know it's not just a high jump. I've seen, a lot of it all the way across the board. I'm like, I would love to see them get, the same kind of recognition. And, I know there's a lot of splintering in there because, there's so many different groups, inside of that. It's hard to say, you're just, you're not, you've got a certain disability compared to somebody else's disability. And, like the guys that are running on the prosthetics where they can really jump off that leg or whatever. And I'm like, so what are you telling me? This guy, he wanted to end up missing that body part so he could have that, fake leg so he could jump. And it just blows me away. There's so much spirit, that indomitable spirit to get up and to train and to keep going and to become, world class, even with whatever your disability is. I would love to see them included.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's something that, is long overdue to implement some more collaboration between para and open sports in general, not just in track and field, but just in general. Adaptive sports should just be more integrated into our society, because physical disability is something that affects a lot of people, even if it's not me directly, somebody within my family. So that's one thing I really love about getting to come here to Chula Vista and get to come to the meets here and get to be a part of this community when I am, is just getting to see the creativity, the grit, the humor that comes with all these different age groups and all these different demographics of people that come and flock to this place. And I think that it's just a good representation of our sport as a whole. Like I said, it should be the most accessible sport. I think we talked about that. Statistically, it probably is the most engaged sport in high school, at least in our country. So I think it's our job as these middle people or these frontliners to just try to create more opportunities and try to help facilitate a positive, engaging experience for those athletes that we do get to work with, and try to show them that they have a little bit of a responsibility as well to uphold the culture and community that is track and field, and that comes back down to how are you managing your attitude, and what are you gaining, or what are you adding to the value of the day-to-day training day, the competition day, just teaching them that it is more about marks, that you really have the chance to grow as a person and to help other people grow as a person every day. And that's the beauty of our sport. It's the beauty of sports in general, but I think track and field is a really beautiful thing, and we've got a great opportunity as coaches to kind of help this thing grow and to help other people grow through it. So that's my goal, and to hopefully connect these dots and try to find more ways to push people in that direction.
Yeah,
I like it. Well, go ahead, finish.
No, just saying, great thoughts.
Yeah, well, I think we should we got to try this again. Maybe have a State of the Union address in every 3 months or something, and say, hey, these opportunities have come across my plate, and we can be the Illuminati group, or whatever you want to call the powers behind the scenes, trying to create a better situation out of this.
Well, before, just because this is, it's a good, like we were just saying, it's a great conversation. Why don't we create a couple of tasks?
Yeah, next steps.
Yes, I like it.
And one of those, I mean, you can obviously get very lost in the weeds on something like this. But maybe it'd be a good idea to try to identify in terms of next steps, what is the priority? What is the first next step that needs to be taken?
Right.
I don't know what that is. I'm thinking much more broad scope than I should. And that's unfortunately the way I've always worked. And, I see, I can see the horizon. I can actually map what that looks like, but it's too big.
Right.
So maybe identifying, okay, what are 2 or 3 things max that would be that next step.
Right.
And flesh it out a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, we mentioned one was trying to get some events made where, either the high jump summit or pole vault summit or, something like that, a smaller, you were talking about showing the venue as being full. I think that's one thing I remember seeing on somebody's feed one time, was it looked like they took the end at a big stadium and just blocked it off. So it was just the high jump, down in one corner. And I remember seeing Barsham or someone jump at something like that, and it looked full, even though it was, probably 1/8 of the stadium, or whatever. But maybe that could be one thing.
Yeah. Ooh. I think too, just thinking about that, there are a lot of meets that are existing already that are pretty low exposure. And I'm just thinking about the pro circuit right now. Like, for instance, the last three pro jumps meets, there's only been like 4 triple jumpers entered in. So like, just finding ways maybe to help promote and generate promotion and exposure for some of the pre-existing meets and models that already are out there.
All right, but
getting some sponsors. Yeah.
Now you're bringing up, the foundation elements, right? Before you can have a meet like that, you got to know what the structure is going to be. You got to know where the money's coming from. You got to have participation from, how many sources, and it's that thinking that has to be done first.
Right.
The idea of sitting there and let's put a meet on. Okay, that's great. Well, we're doing nothing. We're doing the exact same thing that's already been done.
Right.
There's a lot of preliminary stuff that has a lot of thinking and a lot of marshaling of resources to even address the smallest thing.
Right.
I don't, I mean, it's that we're talking about big stuff here. Even like you're saying, even, say Lauren, for a jumps summit or, I don't know, anything. That's a huge task.
Definitely.
So, here's one thing. Here's a thought, Lauren. Since you have access to the people in Reno, maybe, getting some of their, spending some time with them and say, okay, what are the requisites for you to have a jump off of this kind of idea? What did you do back in the day, or when you took it over, or whatever?
Definitely.
What has to be in place in order for something like this to be successful?
Yeah, I love that. That's a great idea.
I'll put out a feeler. I'll get in touch with try and get in touch with Casey Wasserman. He's, just so you know, he's the chairman of the 28 games.
Wow.
Okay. I love that.
And just because he thinks along these lines, and he will say, you're out of your mind. It's a waste of your time. It's not going to happen. Here are the reasons why. He won't hesitate for a second. At the same time, when I approached him about this before, he said, yeah, this is doable.
Right.
Of course, that was quite a while ago, and times have changed.
Right.
So,
yeah.
But let me see if I can get in touch with him.
Yeah.
What's another kind of foundational element of even, I mean, if we're targeting something like a summit, I don't even know whether that's the right way to go. I have no idea.
How do we get the Paralympians involved? That's something I would really like to do. When you brought that
Right.
up, I was like, I think that would be great.
Paralympians and Masters.
Yeah. Who
Yeah.
is the person?
But Troy, here's something for you. Here's something to think about. Generating excitement is absolutely key
Yes.
to continuity, and I mean to continuing the to kind of build on. In other words, to make sure that you can come back and do it again.
Right.
So what are, and this is not a question to be answered right now, but the question is, what are the elements that create excitement? Maybe
like
start putting those thoughts together. What comes under the umbrella of creating spectator excitement?
Marketing.
Yeah, but that's a big umbrella, right?
Yeah.
I'm saying underneath marketing, what are the 5 things, 3, 4 things that have to be there in order to be kind of a self
Let's in the seats.
a self-perpetuating thing, right?
Yeah.
That it feeds on itself. And then like the summit, you get done with it and everybody's hyped up and they're stoked, and all of a sudden you got kids that had never thought about vaulting before that are going back to their respective places and they're vaulting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're talking about it and they're pumping it up and they're looking forward to the next summit. Well, what are those things? I don't know what they are. I mean, I think
personality is one of them.
Yeah.
That sport has a lot of personality.
You gotta have it. What are the elements of exposure? What are the parts of that excitement that include butts in the seats in the stands?
Mm-hmm.
What are the parts that require media coverage? I'll tell you, somebody who to talk to, Troy, would be Don Franken.
I was thinking of Al, but yeah, Don.
Al's out of it.
Al's out of it.
Yeah, and he may be out of it permanently.
Right.
But Don would take in this. Gary Hill would take an interest in this.
Yes.
And
Hill.
do you know, Lauren, do you know who Gary Hill is?
No, that sounds really familiar though.
He's the editor-in-chief for Track and Field News. He owns.
Okay.
I'll tell you, just I ended up sleeping at his place in Los Altos after this. I used to live in Northern California. I was training in Northern California. So I first moved out and I was competing, trying to make my way in the decathlon.
Yeah.
And we were, I don't know where we were, but there was some big throwers thing, as I recall.
Oh.
And a lot of that was, the San Jose area was big in throws back in the day.
Yeah.
And it got ugly after this period of time. And I don't know, I ended up back at Gary's house and with him and just camped. I was parked in, some couch somewhere. But anyway, so guys like that, Troy, would be guys to talk to, just bounce ideas off. Just find what are the keys to sports promotion, a successful sports promotion of events or a series or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They'll know what that is.
I think we need to get younger. I think, both the demographics, in America, baseball's been dying slowly also, even though there's still money at the top. There's still, a lot of things that are slowing the game down. You're losing, all the old guys like us, they just keep getting older and dying off, and they're not replacing them with young people that really want to watch baseball because it's just too long for them. They can't pay attention that long,
Right.
And so it needs to have a younger idea to it. I remember listening to someone talking, I think it's the owner of the Mavericks, it's on Shark Tank, Mark Cuban. He was talking about how, that American teenagers were going to be more attracted to baseball if they could just follow the one guy that they have on their fantasy team on their phone, Like if they're, they get a little alert on their phone saying, hey, your guy's up. He's up right now in this game. There's two on and it's the bottom of the ninth, and here comes the feed on your phone and you're watching YouTube TV or something and it's your guy, and that holds your captive interest for 2 minutes, and so there's some of that kind of thinking that might have to go into it too. I like these fully interactive stadiums. I mean, all I keep hearing on sports radio is how unbelievable SoFi Stadium is. State of the art, this and that, totally interactive, blah, blah, blah. And we all, talked about how great it was at Mount Sac with that huge screen right behind everything. I remember thinking, I would love to have, my high jump wish list is the, one camera straight down the bar for either shot so I can see sideways lean and knee drive, right? And then I'd like to have a shot straight at both standards, 2 different cameras, where I can see the lean back angle. And then I'd love to have an overhead camera so I can see the curve, right? And then you got all those 3 cameras going. And if you could give me John Garhammer and his force plates, I'd be in heaven. Put force plates under both takeoff areas. But then you have all of that on a quick replay loop right up there on the big screen where you've watched a jump. And just like they showed, the Olympics is always, again, even with Dwight, you would think Dwight would say, why don't you give us a different angle? Like here's this horrible angle that they give you and you see the first angle and then you see a replay and then you may or may not have somebody telling you about that jump, depending on the year, that knows anything about it. And, here at Mount Sac, if you had that set up, you could be like, as soon as I take my jump as the athlete, instead of being worried about, you remember in the old days, you get disqualified for looking at your phone or for somebody taking a video, right? You just look at the screen. There's your replay. You got 3 angles, first one and the other, boom, boom, boom. And that's completely interactive, and you could have stuff like that going. I don't think even with what they have there at Mount Sac, that huge screen, they didn't put that to use hardly at all while we were there, and that's an unbelievable resource.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how they put that in motion in the future, because hopefully it's sooner than later. I know we haven't really gotten into like talking about the track and field league at all, but hoping that some of these things start to pop up a little bit more as other leagues pop up as well.
To sound really, really out of it, what is the track and field league?
I'm probably not the best person to answer that with a lot of detail, but from what I can tell, there's a few investors that are trying to start a bit of a league for professional track athletes, post-collegiate athletes. There was a draft situation and last year, and it didn't pan out, I don't think, financially for the group that was trying to do that. But I think that is in motion for this year, or not this coming. Obviously, this year's pretty close to being done.
It sounds a lot like close to what I was talking about 25 years ago. So I've got to cut out. I've got to get off.
Yeah, I got to hop soon too.
Yep.
Unfortunately.
I think we're all getting there.
So, all right. So we have our assignments. Troy, it'll be up to you to reconvene us.
Okay. Yeah.
If that's
our first repeat podcast. This is actually our first with 2 participants early. We had one that happened by accident with Randall Cunningham, who called in the middle of a show a while back, and that was fun. And we just patched him right in and got right down to business. And so that was my first multi-guest show, but this is the first one that was planned ahead of time. And it would be awesome, like we said, to reconvene after a short period of time. Did everybody get their jobs? Am I trying to get in touch with Don Franken? And were you going to do Gary Hill, or do you want me to call him? You're the one.
I can call Gary. I'll call Gary. There was somebody else I was thinking about calling too that might be even better. Let me touch base with Ryan Soderberg in IAAF.
Yeah, and I'm going to reach out to the UCS guys in Reno.
Yeah.
And in South Carolina, they do a lot. The UCS Spirit, they do a lot of street vaults and street events and stuff in the
what about the
East Coast.
What's to be totally, show again how little I know. Where would I go to to jump to the top of the information pile there.
What are we talking about?
Who's the
Who?
best
Para.
person to get in touch with for Paralympians? Both.
That's a good
not-
question.
You know what I would do, Troy, is I would contact the governing body and tell them you want to get in touch with the local association,
Okay.
and then pick somebody that knows what the frig they're talking about locally.
Right.
Not some.
Some questions here while I'm in Chula over the next couple of days
Yeah.
as well.
What's that?
I said I can also ask a few of those questions while I'm here in Chula Vista.
Oh, cool.
Next couple of days.
Yeah. Jeremy's had his ear to the ground a lot longer than I've had, for sure.
And I'll put a note out to Casey.
Awesome.
See if he's I'm sure busier than one arm paper hanger, but hopefully he'll respond.
All right. Well, once again, thank you to my two guests, Lauren Magneson, who was graciously spending her time with us from live from the Chula Vista Training Center down at Jeremy Fisher's end of the world in down in San Diego, Chula Vista area, and an added thank you to longtime friend, mentor, and spiritual guide. I had I put on my job application for Mount Sac. They said relationship to the person who's writing your letter of recommendation, and I said Padawan to Jedi Knight. So I don't know if anybody's going to get that joke, but I
they're not. So that's good.
I said my relationship is Padawan to Jedi Knight. So we'll see how that goes. Thank you both for taking an hour and a half out of your day to spend talking.
Absolutely.
With washed up old.
Yeah, I loved it.
And
Yeah, that was awesome.
Lauren, did I missed this? Are you training for 24?
I'm aiming for it. Yeah, I did get in a small car accident earlier this year that I've got some residual whiplash injuries from. I jumped a little earlier this spring, but I'm just decided to kind of pull back because my neck is still having some issues. So I'm hopeful that I'll be able to jump again next year and year after next, and hopefully for a few more years after that. But right now I'm just focusing on rehab and just general fitness and kind of working this summer to grow my coaching connections and education. Yeah.
And Troy, you guys know each other because are you guys working together?
Not yet. No, I bumped into Lauren at the Azusa Pacific meet. She's jumping at, I think, one of the last meets that Barbara Pachoka was jumping at. So
yep,
that's where we crossed paths. So
yeah. Well,
yeah.
you've also interviewed a couple of my friends too, which is good.
Right. Who was on that list? I remember Chinyenye and who else?
Well, Tyler Arroyo is a good friend of mine, and then Marcus Gelpy.
Right. Right. We had a fun. He's a fun kid. Tell you what.
He's a cool kid. He's a really cool kid.
He was a great podcast. I mean, for most people be like, okay, Marcus who? And I'm like, every time I watch this kid on Instagram, he's jumping 4 inches higher than he's jumped before. So
he's a stud. It's been really fun to watch him grow this year.
Yeah. And he's a, great attitude, great, just real fun young man. So yeah.
So Lauren, who do you work with down in San Diego then?
I actually don't live here. I live in Chico because I've been coaching up at Chico State.
Okay.
Yeah, I lived here last year. I was doing I was doing an internship at a sports performance facility, doing some biomechanical analysis and some training and things. And then I started training here late December and did about a month or so of training with the group, with the jumpers, and that was really cool with Coach Fisher. So ultimately, I would love to get back down here and try to get back into training here, but I need to make sure that I have my, life set up to be able to support that goal. And also just want to make sure that my body's kind of ready to buckle down for training once again. That's the goal. That's the hope. But
cool.
I wouldn't.
Cool.
Yep.
All right,
guys.
Troy, Lauren, thank you.
All right.
Yes, thank you both for your time. I appreciate meeting you, and I'm glad that we could connect, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what we can come up with and how we can move forward in the future.
Awesome. Yep. We all got our homework.
Awesome. Cool, right, guys. Well, have a great afternoon.
All right. You too. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.